Hello and welcome to episode 2 of how to become a better fly tyer. Today it will probably be a sort of shorter episode because we are handling the Mayfly Cripple, the Crippled Mayfly. Yeah, this is actually one of my favorite flies to fish, and if I will fish a Mayfly like 99% of the time, I actually fish a Crippled Mayfly. Either here in Sweden, either the little bit slightly larger one, Yellow May, or I also, but most of the time I fish the Baetis, the BVO, the blue-winged olive crippled. That is actually, I've caught some of my biggest, largest brown trout on dry fly on this kind of fly, or flies, what to say, even the Yellow May. Actually, when I was in Russia, I lost a fish somewhere between 6 and 7 kilo on a Yellow Mayfly crippled. Yeah, but I have caught some really nice big ones. 3.5 kilo fish on the crippled Mayfly. And here's the thing again, you tie this almost like you tie a dun state, but yeah, or with the same kind of material actually, but you tie it in a special way like a hackled fly. But we will go through some of the materials as we always do, and will do. And the fly itself, I tie it quite easy. For the tail, I use cocktailion, but you can also use like moose mane, which is really nice and very durable. You just take a few strands of that one, but don't use like this what's it called, tail fibbets. Yeah, I don't use them for this kind of flies. I use them for emergers, and I use them for duns and spent spinners, but never for cripples. I want the fly to lay on in a special way in the surface, so that is why I tie it like I tie it. A lot of people, they tie these flies in a very special way, but I have a sort of my own style for it, and I think it lays the best and fishes the best at this way. I have tied cripples for many years, and this is the solution that I have come to. So for the tail, I use cocktailion fibers, like 99.9% of the time. And then for body, here I would recommend to use a really thin fiber dubbing, not no natural fur dubbing, synthetic thin fiber dubbing. You can also use a kapok, but I prefer to use super fine dubbing. That is perfect for these kind of flies. It's very easy to dub, and it lays really good and doesn't soak up water in that way, so it will sink. And it holds up the fly really good, and it's a really thin fiber, so you can tie flies down to size 20-22 if you need it, but yeah, not very often you do that actually. But for the body, I use for the 14, 16, 18 I use superfine, but actually for size 12, 10 I use actually Senu laser dub, because it's also really nice and it has a little bit of flash into it. And that is, I think that could be really nice sometimes actually. So that I use actually for the thorax of certain flies. And also a really nice dubbing for this is the Bruiser blend. It's a dubbing from Fly Fish Food, I think, from the beginning, but it's Hairline who does it, and it's really, really nice. You can use it to a lot of different flies, but it's really, really thin fibers, so you can use it for the bodies, which is really nice. And then for the wing, I would say it's 3 things you can use for the wing. Like, I love the CDC, of course, but then you can also use this kind of material. It's deer hair, and also poly yarn, depending what you want with the fly and sort of. But I would say CDC is the one that is preferable because it dries up very easy, and it get a really nice, a little bit of volume and stuff into the fly, and you can see it in a good manner, and it rarely break and stuff like that. I also forgot to say one thing for the body also. Except Superfine Bruiser Blend, you can also tie a lot of really nice cripples with biots for the back body, and then you use a dubbing for the thorax. But biot strips, turkey bites or goose bites, depending on the size of the fly, that is really nice, and you get a really nice thin body to the fly, which is really nice sometimes. I also sometimes actually into the tail add a little bit of crystal flash, just 2 strands or 1 strand or something. I actually notice sometimes it could be really nice because it gets a little flash into the shuck, especially on a little bit more sunny days. I use a little flash tail to it. On more damp days I use just a normal tied crippled, yeah. But that's the thing when you tie the crippled for slightly bigger ones. That is why I use the Senju laser dub, because it has a little bit flash into it, and apparently that is sometimes what the fish wants and like. And then for the hackle, I most of the time use a grizzly saddle hackle, but you can use cape hackle, brown, black, depending of what you are imitating, what kind of fly. But if I just would say that you should just buy and need one, I would use a grizzly hackle. It works for all kind of species of mayflies, I would say, because even if you tie a yellow Meidan or a Ephemera danica or a BVO, Baetis, Leptophlebia, grizzly has a really nice turn to it. And what you can do, since it's black and white grizzly, you can use a marker pen just to color it up if you want it a slightly bit brown or yellow, or sort of. You can use a marker pen just to give it a little bit of color, actually. And for the hackle, this is one thing that I see a lot on Facebook, Instagram, and I think it's worthless. If you're gonna tie a fly that imitates something, don't overdo the hackle. People do these Facebook hackles, 400 turns of hackle. I mean, the hackle is from the beginning to imitate the legs of the fly. So when I tie these flies, I do like 3, perhaps 4 turns with the hackle, just to imitate the legs and have the fly laying exactly good in the surface. If you tie it with this really hard hackle, you will have the fly laying in a strange way in the surface, and I don't think it fishes the equal as good as when you tie the hackle with a few turns, imitating the legs, and it will lay perfect in the surface. And this is also to think about if you use some fat or something, just put a little bit on the top of the hackle and on the CDC or the polygon or so, because the fly is supposed to imitate a handicapped mayfly between the emerger and done state, and that is why you tie the fly this way. You can tie it on a different way, try it out yourself, it maybe will work perfect for you, but I have tied cripples for many years, and I tied them in different varieties and stuff like this, and this is the way it fishes the best. So this is really my go-to pattern if I'm fishing with rice, no matter time of year and where I go, if I fish home rivers or others. This is the fly, my go-to fly most of the time. What else to think about? I tie this fly on a straight hook. You can also tie it on a slightly bent hook, but I prefer most of the time to fish it on a straight hook, because then I noticed it lays more better in the water. But you can also tie it on a slightly bent, especially if you tie slightly bigger flies like 14, 12, 10s. I sometimes use a slightly bent hook, but most of the time size 14, 16, 18 I use a straight hook, a straight dry fly hook, and don't have too thick wire on the fly because then it will probably sink. No, most likely not, but I prefer to use a sort of thin wire hook. Not too thin, of course. You want to be able to fight big fish. Not like I did. I lost that 6-7 kilo trout because I fight it a little bit too hard on this hook. But straight hook. Use a normal thread. Doesn't need to be like anything special about the thread. 12-aught or 16-aught or maybe some of these nano silk threads. That will work perfect. And I will tie one of my favorite flies, of course, for you, and then you will see how I tie the fly. My favorite fly of all time. So let's do that. So of course we'll start with the hook. This is a size 14, and I will tie a blue-winged olive or Baetis crippled. This is a size 14, that's a good size. I fish this in size 14 and 16. Sometimes 18, but 16 is enough. And I use a brown nano silk thread. And of course we'll start with the tail. And here to think about, as we did with the merger, if you have seen that, don't take the tails too long and don't do them too short. This is the rule of half that someone calls it when they fish with streamers. You can see, okay, that half of that hook, and then you just put it to the back and tie it in. And I will actually tie this with as I said before, some of this crystal hackle. And I just use one strand like this and tie it in. And it doesn't really need to be fancy. It's like this. And then I just cut it about the same size as the tail. And then for the body, for the back body of this particular fly, I always use, or most of the flies, most of the cripples, I use a slightly lighter colored abdomen or back body, what to call it. So this is just a normal olive for this one, and I tie this in like, let's say 3/5 of the fly, as you can see here, and then we will start with the wing. And now this is the pale done. I most of the time actually use natural colored CDC of this fly. That is what I prefer to almost all kind of flies, dry flies. Most of them, depending of course. Sometimes if you tie a yellow mayfly down or so, you can use a little bit thinner, not thinner, but another color. And here is the same thing. Don't tie it too short. Actually, you can actually tie it quite far off if you want to, but I will sort of do the wing as the same length as the body, and then I tie it back to this. And here is the thing: to get some extra flotation to the fly and have it laying perfect, I cut it like that. So I actually save a little bit of the CDC as a flotation device for the fly, which I think is really nice, especially for the cripples. That is what I have seen and tried, and I think it. I know a lot of people, they tie the flies this way, and I think it's really good because it gets the fly to look quite nice, and it yeah, like I said, it gives a little bit extra flotation. And here for the hackle, as I talked about, I used the grizzly one, and I tie it in. And what to say about the hackle? I would prefer to use a slightly longer hackle fiber than shorter. If you tying some kind of fly, I prefer to use a slightly longer hackle fiber to the stem than a shorter one, because I think it lays better, get a slightly better flotation, and imitates the legs in a better way. So now we're at the thorax of the fly, and here I always use slightly more colored dubbing, sort of same colorization, like light olive and now a dark olive. And also think about, don't use too much of the dubbing. And here's the trick, which I use. Some people, they like just lay hackles like this. Don't do that. The hackle is for imitating the legs, if you ask me. So I used 1, 2, 3, and that's enough. That will give the fly the legs and perfect flotation, and it looks way better, if you ask me, than these super hackled flies. And you don't overdo the hackle. So here is the best dry fly in the world. Yeah, some of them. This is my favorite crippled. It works really good for a lot of species. And if you're not sure if the fish eats the dun, the merger, the spent, this is actually a good fish fly. And it works very well to fish in quite a fast water also. Then sometimes I use actually 3 CDC feathers, or 4 maybe if I tie it in a bigger size, larger size. So hope you I could teach you something new about the cripples, and yeah, if there's anything else, just give me a shout and or a comment or something, and thanks for watching.